إدريس رئيس السادة وادرك علي وعندك القيادة.
الشيخ إدريس رئيس السادة وادرك علي وعندك القيادة.
رب العبادة ربي السماء لا بلا عبادة.
وادرك علي وعندك القيادة.
أعن ربي على العبادة.
أعن ربي على العبادة.
واجعل جزانا الحسنى وزيادة. الشيخ إدريس رئيس الغادة.
Sudanese prominent Sufi figures. الشيخ إدريس الأرباب 1507-1650. Sheikh Idris al-Arbab was a scholar of Islamic law, a Gnostic of God, and one of the most prominent figures of Sudanese Sufism in the 16th century. In previous episodes, we presented him as one of the most influential Sufi personalities in Sudanese history. We saw him acting as a wise mediator in resolving the first major conflict that emerged during the formative years of Fon Sultanate, the first modern Sudanese state, by intervening to hold the war between the Fon and the Abdullah. He helped establish the values of reconciliation and stability at a critical moment in the country's history. We also introduce him as an advocate and intercessor for people with grievances and needs. He played an important role in mediating between ordinary people and the rulers of the kingdom of Sinnar, conveying the concerns of the oppressed and the needs of the populace to the political authorities. In doing so, he embodied the social and humanitarian dimensions of Sudanese Sufism. Today, we meet Sheikh Idris al-Arbab from yet another important perspective. We encounter him as a distinguished scholar deeply grounded in the Islamic sciences through his legal ruling on the issue of tobacco consumption. He declared both smoking and the use of tobacco to be prohibited and engaged in a scholarly debate with the renowned Azhariyat scholar الأجهوري, a debate in which his arguments ultimately prevailed. So the audience, I'm so delighted that our documentary journey with Sheikh Idris al-Arbab continues as part of our series on the great figures of Sudanese Sufism. In every episode, we uncover a new dimension of his personality and his contributions to the intellectual, social, scientific, and historical life of Sudan. So as you listen to your audience, this is a new encounter with the renowned Sudanese Sufi, Sheikh Idris al-Arbab. We meet him today as a scholar that debated the eminent Azhari scholars and Maliki expert. I'm referring here to Imam Malik Mazhab, that is Sheikh Ali al-Ajhuri. So in our presence, as I told Sheikh Idris, and this time we would like to introduce him as qualified, competent and masterfully scholar of Sharia law. Stay with us. his scholarly debates. Many historians have written about the breadth of Sheikh Idris with الأرباب's knowledge in Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh. He engaged in several scholarly debates with his contemporaries. The most famous being his debate with Sheikh Ali al-Ajhuri in the field of jurisprudence. Al-Ajhuri was regarded as one of the most foremost authorities of the Maliki school of law, an imam among imams and one of the leading scholars of his age. This debate therefore enhanced the prestige of both the scholarly tradition from which Sheikh Idris emerged as one of the most knowledgeable Sudanese figures in the field of jurisprudence. Although Sheikh Idris remained committed to the school or the Maliki school, he was known for holding independent views on a number of legal questions. According to Sheikh Muhammad Al-Khalifa Hassan Abu Groon, in his book, The Qadiriya Sufi Order in Sudan and the Call to God, the educational institution of Sheikh Hamad, the author here referring to Sheikh Hamad al-Dumaryum, combined Quranic studies with the study of jurisprudence and Arabic linguistic sciences. One researcher notes that the strength of this scholarly training is evident from the fact that it prepared Sheikh Idris to challenge Sheikh Ali al-Ajhuri in the legal debate. Al-Ajhuri was not merely a Maliki scholar. He was considered the leading Maliki authority of his era, the Imam of Imams, and one of the greatest scholars of guidance and learning. To engage such a figure in a scholarly debate demonstrates the depth of Sheikh Idris' mastery of jurisprudence. The Sudanese noted historian Muhammad Nur al-Difallah. By the way, Muhammad Nur al-Difallah was the first Sudanese to write a book. And his book is referring to as Kitab al-Tabaqat. It is first recorded and written material that describe and at the same time consider a reflection to the lives of the Sudanese during 16th century. So the historian Nubdifallah describes Sheikh Idris' intellectual capacity in terms that elevate him beyond the ordinary level of acquired learning. He writes that whenever Sheikh Idris discussed any branch of knowledge, listeners would assume that it was his sole specialty because of the depth of his expertise. He was equally capable of speaking about the sciences of earlier peoples, sacred history and religious knowledge. Distinguished scholars, it is said, appear like children in his presence due to the vastness of his learning and knowledge. Throughout his life, Sheikh Idris debated scholars on numerous matters affecting the religious lives of the ordinary people. While remaining within the framework of the Maliki school, he often exercised independent judgment when debate that appears to have attracted widespread public attention concern the legal status of tobacco smoking. The presence of Sheikh Ajib al-Manjuluk, one of the leading Sudanese religious political leaders during Sultanate. Sheikh Idris debated Sharif Abdul Wahab. Sheikh Idris maintained that tobacco was prohibited, while Sharif Abdul Wahab argued for its permissibility. During the discussion, Sharif Abdul Wahab reportedly challenged him by asking whether his opinion came from his own head or from his books. Sheikh Idris based his ruling on early scholarly precedents and legal principles that he considered authoritative. He referred to legal opinions attributed to Sultan Mustafa, discussed principles associated with Imam Malik regarding obedience to authority, and addressed issues for which no explicit scriptural text existed. This reflected a sophisticated level of juristic reasoning, moving beyond mere adherence to inherited opinions and demonstrating an ability to formulate independent legal judgments in matters open to interpretation. His convention Sheikh Idris' convention led him to correspond with Sheikh Ali al-Ajhuri in Egypt through his student Ahmad Abu Agrab. He sent a letter explaining his legal reasoning for the prohibition of tobacco. According to tradition, one statement in the letter troubled al-Ajhuri. Sheikh Idris reportedly wrote that he had heard the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, say, tobacco is forbidden. Upon reading this, al-Ajhuri is said to have rejected the letter and returned it to the messenger. The controversy over tobacco was not confined to the foreign kingdom. Across the Islamic world, scholars were divided over the issue. It appears that Sheikh Idris was aware of al-Ajhuri's opinion permitting tobacco and wrote to him in response. At that time, Al-Azhar was a major arena for scholarly debate, and questions concerning tobacco occupied many leading jurists. According to Sudanese tradition, Sheikh Idris' letter generated considerable discussion within scholarly circles at Al-Azhar. The matter eventually involved two renowned Maliki scholars, Sheikh al-Ajhuri and his contemporary Sheikh Ibrahim al-Laghani, the celebrated author of Jawharat al-Tawheed. The dispute reportedly culminated in a mutual invocation of divine judgment, or what is known as Mubahala. It is related that al-Laghani prayed, makes the supplication, O Allah, whichever of us awakens blind is upon falsehood. Both scholars were confident in the correctness of their positions. So Sheikh al-Laghani here prayed, supplicated God that whoever, and here I would like to point out that al-Laghani and Sheikh al-Ajhuri debating the issue of tobacco, and al-Laghani prayed to God that whoever of them believe that smoking tobacco is permitted or to be blind. That in other words, curse descend upon him to be blind. Subsequently, Al-Ajhuri lost his sight after suffering an injury to the head. However, tradition maintains that his blindness was later cured and that he experienced a vision involving the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, concerning the matter of tobacco.
عندك حسانة ما شحادة ما شحادة علي حق وزيادة علي وعندك الغيادة الشيخ إدريس رئيس السادة علي وعندك الغيادة إلى عبادة صلاة لا شافع المعادة.
Following this experience, Al-Ajhuri reportedly summoned Muhammad with Abu Agrab, the messenger from Sheikh Idris with الأرباب, and sent gifts to Sheikh Idris in recognition of his scholarly stature and spiritual insight. These gifts included the attire traditional associated with scholars, a turban, sash, robe, and the famous Al-Ajhuriya banner. According to tradition, this banner, made of kuba and bearing a crescent with the date 9881 Hijri inscribed upon it, remained in the possession of Sheikh Idris' descendants. The tobacco controversy was only one example of Sheikh Idris' independent legal reasoning. He frequently expressed jurist opinions that differed from those of more conventional scholars, unlike jurists who restricted themselves to the established commentaries and legal manuals. Sheikh Idris demonstrated a willingness to engage directly with legal principles and exercise informed judgment.
الدنيا دي ما دار قعادة زي بث مباشر بدون إعادة عندك علي وعندك الغيادة اكتبنا فيها من السعادة اكتبنا فيها من السعادة اكتبنا فيها من السعادة اكتبنا فيها من السعادة واحمينا من شر السعادة عندك علي وعندك الغيادة.
His reputation attracted scholars from across the region. Among them was Sheikh Suhairun, a distinguished scholar from Goz al-Ilm, accompanied by 20 students carrying authoritative legal texts. He visited Sheikh Idris to test his knowledge. They presented 17 legal questions, many involving issues on which Sheikh Idris was known to hold distinctive opinions. He answered each question with such depth and insight that Sheikh Saghirun and his students acknowledged his learning and accepted his spiritual path. Yet, this spirit of independent reasoning did not always please more conservative jurists. Some opposed him and steered public criticism against him. His prohibition of tobacco, in particular, appears to have provoked hostility among certain groups. These disputes caused him considerable hardship, and at one point he sought consolation from his contemporary, the scholar and spiritual master Sheikh Muhammad Isa Suwar al-Dahab, who responded with verses of poetry intended to comfort and encourage him. Listening to him, والله لو كان بين الناس جبريل لا بد فيه من قال وقيل قالوا في الله أضعافا مضاعفة تتلى إذا رتل القرآن ترتيلا وأدخالوا له أمن وصاحبة إثما وذورا وتعطيلا وتبديلا انظر كلامهم في الله خالقهم فكيف إذا قيل وما قيل.
مصير
So the audience, I would like to reminding you that I'm presenting Sheikh Idrис with الأرباب. In our fourth encounter with him, we presented him as one of the prominent Sudanese Sufi figures, and our meeting with him today is covering the area of his scholarly dimension. So I would like to share the same story, the same event that I have shared, that is Sheikh Idris' story with the Imam of Azhar, Sheikh الأجهوري. And this time we would like to share the views of the British author and writer Hillelson on the study طبقات الضيف الله, studied in the lives of the scholars and Senate, Sudan Notes and Records, volume 5, 1923. The title of the article, Sheikh Idris and the Azhar Scholar. A few more anecdotes may be quoted to illustrate the intellectual caliber of the men of learning and the kind of problems which agitated their minds. During the time of Sheikh Idris ibn al-Arbab, the end of the 16th century, the custom of drinking coffee and smoking tobacco had become prevalent. And though coffee was generally agreed to be lawful, there was divergence of opinion with regard to tobacco. A debate was held at Rufa'a in the presence of Sheikh Ajib, the temporal ruler between Idris ibn al-Arbab and Sharif Abdul Wahab. The former opened by categorically declaring tobacco to be unlawful, but was to produce his authorities. Does this come out of your head or from your book? He replied, Sheikh Idris, tobacco has been declared unlawful by Sultan Mustafa of Istanbul, and the right of Maliki enjoins obedience to the Sultan and recourse to him in cases where there is no clear text emanating from the lawgiver. Furthermore, I have been informed by the Prophet that it is unlawful. So the speech here to Sheikh Idris al-Arbab. A revelation to which Muhammad al-Hamim and Hassan al-Husuna can bear witness, and even Duchesne, the judge, who smoked until the day of his death, at first declared it to forbidden. Said Sharif Abdul Wahab, for me, the practice of Duchesne is good enough, said Sharif Abdul Wahab. But to clinch the agreement, Sheikh Dafa Allah, who seemed to have been present at the debate, sent to the tomb of Qadi Duchesne to put the question to the dead man, and out of the grave came the answer: tobacco is unlawful. Bid the Sheikh pray that I may be pardoned for smoking. This appeared too much for our pious author, who remarks parenthetically that a voice from the tomb may be a miracle, but cannot be used as an argument on which to base a legal ruling. To make assurance doubly, Sheikh Idris referred the problem to Cairo, where were two doctors of the Maliki right enjoyed the special fame, Al-Ajhuri and Al-Lagani, who held opposition views concerning the question and debated it publicly and dramatically in one of the Cairo mosques. As the Friday was over, Al-Lagani enjoined all believers to keep their places and addressed Al-Ajhuri as follows: tobacco has been brought by the Christian out of the Frankish country to cause trouble among us, the Muslims, and now you stirring up trouble by ruling it to be lawful, whereas it is forbidden for three reasons: because it is an innovation, bid'ah; because it is wasteful, extravagance, and because it is spent in fire, said Al-Ajhuri. As for it being an innovation, what do you say concerning the wearing of garments such as the Prophet never wore? And as for extravagance, may not a man who is alimony for the support of his family has been fixed at 3 dirhams lawfully, give them 10, and for it being banned, is not coffee pain likewise, yet may be drunk lawfully. Al-Lagani was in argument, thereupon challenged his opponents to the ordeal of Mubahala, the mutual curse, praying that whichever of the two was wrong in his ruling should be struck blind. And as soon afterwards, Al-Ajhuri was stabbed in the head by a Maghrabi sheikh, whom he had offended by one of his decisions and became blind in consequence. He subsequently had a vision of the Prophet which convinced him of virtue and holiness of the Sheikh Idris and sent him the famous flag bearing the date of 1981 and his turban and belt and links of cloth. So at the end of this episode, I would like to point out to the sources that I have consulted. الطريقة القادرية في السودان والدعوة إلى الله، الشيخ محمد الخليفة الحسن أبو قرون، published book. Wikipedia and Hillelson طبقات الضيف الله studies in leaves of the scholars and Senate Sudan Notes and Record Volume 5 1923. By this the audience I came to the end of the episode till seeing you in another episode. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
المحارب بلا عدادة، عمر محارب بلا عدادة، عمر محارب، عمر محارب بلا عدادة، عمر محارب، عمر محارب بلا عدادة، استني من جده والامدادة، غدرك علي وعينك الغياب، الشيخ إدريس رئيس السادة، غدرك علي وعينك الغيادة، غدرك علي عندك القيادة، غدرك علي عندك القيادة، الشيخ إدريس رئيس السادة، غدرك علي عندك القيادة.